So we're back here on the Zero Empty Spaces podcast, episode 23, with local artist Andrew Hollimon from his Boynton Beach studio here at Compson Place and Renaissance Commons at 1880 North Congress Avenue, Suite 190 in the beautiful city of Boynton Beach, Florida. If you didn't know about Zero Empty Spaces, we started an initiative as arts advocates and community builders to activate vacant commercial retail spaces to make affordable artist studios at $2 per square foot for artists to have a safe, affordable space to create in outside their house on a month-to-month basis with the water and electric included. To find out more, you can log on to www.zeroemptyspaces.com. The point of the podcast is to connect you with the talented artists like this gentleman that make the program what it is. So without much further ado, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in the arts at a high level here?
We'll do that. First, let me thank you, though, for allowing me to dispense with the mask for a moment.
Amen.
I've had my shots, and I've actually had COVID, so I think we can do this for a couple of minutes.
All right.
How did my art start? Well, coming from a childhood obsession with drawing. I love to draw. And I drew throughout my young years incessantly, daily. As I mentioned before, I come from an environment, St. Louis, Missouri, where Mom didn't allow me out much in the late hours. It's just not safe, to be perfectly frank about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I drew up until I was in my early teens, and I moved into, so never had an art lesson in high school. In fact, the environment was such that if I were to traipse home to and from high school, we walked, of course, back in the day, with art supplies, I may not have grown to be a full adult. I think I would have caught some heck for that. So I never took an art lesson. And art came to me after I got out of the military, after quite a few years, finishing my bachelor's and while I was in my master's program, I decided I needed a hobby. And I decided that why not develop a hobby at which I like to leverage what I like doing, and that is drawing. Well, that worked for a while, and I would sit at work in corporate America, HR manager, and I was on the phone, and I would doodle and doodle and doodle and doodle. And after a day or so, I would look down, wow, that actually looks like abstract art. And I said, let me explore that. Gas prices are going up. I had an old Grand Prix. I won't give the year, but it was guzzling me. And I said, let me get some art supplies. So I bought some oil paint. I almost wish now I had bought acrylic. I bought some oil paint, brush, and some canvas boards. And I played around with that for a bit. And I didn't like what was going down. It wasn't like drawing. So I decided to do something I don't tell a lot of folks about. And that is, I started to paint in numbers.
And for those that maybe aren't familiar with paint by numbers, and
I'll explain. Paint by numbers is the more apropos term. And basically what it boils down to, and you've seen them, go to the hobby store, it's got little things, it's got a little sketch there.
little outline.
Wildlife predominantly. Now it's gotten pretty sophisticated though. I've seen some imitation Van Goghs and some all sorts of things. Well, you know, it's there, it's preset with numbers, and you just take, and the paint that comes with it has numbers, and you take a number and you paint the number. You take a number and you paint the number.
To correspond with the...
You're corresponding, the number corresponds with the paint. You got your paint here. One's green, two is blue.
Mm-hmm.
So you take your ones and you do your twos. And you know, at times I would do all my ones, then I'd come back and do my twos. So to make a long story short, that didn't last very long because it didn't allow me to do what was probably innate that I didn't recognize, and that pure creativity of growing and developing into an artist. I had a script, not good. So I started going outside of the numbering system and just taking the little mechanical item that they gave me that I bought and started playing around with the paint. And I'll be darned if it didn't look better. So from there, I dispensed of that. And I started to play around with stretched canvas. And I still drawing first, though. Most of my artwork, 99% of my artwork starts with drawing first. And I started drawing and painting that way. Lots of failure, but for someone that's never had an art lesson, I think I've come along quite well. Now, I need to be careful about that because I read an article yesterday, and people were taking exception with us folk that like to say we had no lessons. We're self-taught. Well, I can understand someone said it was bragging. Another person said it's to cover deficiencies. Well, I'm kind of like up here with that, and it's a positive reinforcement to me as to what I have gone through to develop into what I consider an artist. And I read a book many, many years ago called Psycho-Cybernetics, and in that book, it helped me understand the power of personal self-development and reinforcement of one's self. So when I mention self-taught, it actually reinforces in my mind what I have done from painting by numbers to what I do now.
I actually think I would maybe even give you more credit that you were able to teach yourself and not just learn from a traditional art school or art class or whatever to get to the level that will show you that he's gotten to. Takes a lot of fortitude, a lot of practice, and a lot of work. So I don't think there's any detractor for being self-taught, and I know people have their opinions, but it's super interesting to see from the initial paint by numbers to getting to the level that you've gotten to now, being exhibited locally, nationally, internationally, and beyond. Who were some of your, or what were some of your inspirations as you've kind of progressed through your creative outlet and practice?
And when you mention inspiration, are you speaking people or are you speaking
artwork, scenery, landscape, the climate?
Well, as inspirational art, for me as an artist, inspiration came from, I'm going to go back to old school artists.
Okay.
Those are the ones that Gauguin, Paul Gauguin, Henri Matisse, and I'm drawing, obviously Van Gogh. Those are the sorts of things, and Da Vinci, those are the sorts of artists that lend themselves more to, that I lend myself more to what they accomplished in their art. I consider myself a realist artist, a realist painter, but I refuse to go with surrealism. While I'll dabble in surrealism, I really do what I call realism with a twist. And I've got some examples of that around here someplace. I think it's just, I'll do realist art, but there's something in that piece that I will do that's certainly not supposed to be there if you're a pure realist. So realism with a twist is what I do. But I really still admire the art of people like Paul Gauguin. Now, there's an artist in St. Louis, Missouri that I admire, and he does not what I do. I don't do what he does, but a guy named William LaChance. And he's internationally known and easy to find. William LaChance, I call him Billy. We met while I was teaching college. As I was winding down my career after many years in human resources and then teaching college towards the end, I met Billy, and I asked Billy once. Billy found out that I was playing around with art, and he said, "I'd like to see some of your art." He's inquisitive like that. So I had a few pieces hanging in the office, and a couple of days went by and seeing Billy, and one day I left the office, and here comes Billy down the hallway. Billy won't remember this. And he came to the office and looked around, and I'm standing there wondering, God, and he's looking around, and he went over here and looked. He did like that. I'm thinking, oh. And then he went over to some pieces that I didn't do that was just wall decorations. I didn't do those, Billy, but you know, he focused on those because he's a pure artist. So after he looked at a couple of pieces that I did, he turned around and says, "I think you got it." You cannot imagine how I felt getting that feedback from Billy, William LaChance. And after a few weeks on down the line, I asked him, "Well, where do you think I ought to go with it?" He said, "Well, you need to start doing some of those shows." He's talking predominantly about 10 shows, and I've done quite a few. I'm moving away from them now, but I've done quite a few, and they do have a purpose, and it worked very, very well. So those are people that inspired me, and there are inspires me still, especially William LaChance's.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Interesting.
And I have local artists that inspire me. Of course, Anthony Burks. I love his work. He's one of the best. I've never seen an artist that's quite so adroit, capable, and excellent at what he does. And I call it pencil art, color pencil. He's doing one now that I'm fond of for bias reasons, and that has charcoal and a few things like that. So the guy is just phenomenal. And there are others, Gary Grumman, and I just can't name them all. My friend over here, my neighbor.
Nicole?
Yes. Admire her.
New neighbor.
My new neighbor.
How about that?
And that's pretty much where it ends up with inspiration.
And we're inspired by your work, and we'd like to show them some of your work. So we're going to take them and show them some of your studio here.
You lead, and I'll follow.
All right. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your work here in your studio?
Well, what I have here are examples of my varied style. I have 10 different styles of art that I practice. Here I have a piece that I accomplished with 99% palette knife work. And I enjoy it, although this is the only sort of artwork that draws sweat from me. Because while I'm an oil painter, and I don't have to worry about drying fast, blending like this, each one of these, I don't think you can see them, but each one of these little niches of paint, nuggets of paint, is one scoop up and on. One scoop up and on, each one. And I'm going to tell you right now, there's at least 300,000 or 400,000 hand movements involved in this piece. Easy, and it's no exaggeration. So each up and on, up and on, up, and then then you blend it. Then you come down here and you have a different use of the knife, where you actually are sliding the knife as such to get a different effect. So this is the sort of artwork that, it's certainly a landscape, but it's the sort of artwork that I occasionally do because I like to use a palette knife from time to time. Here I have some pieces that I call my sunflower burst. They are small items, low-cost items, low-priced items, but I love to do them because it allows me to play around with what is obvious burst of color.
It's your creative outlet.
Yeah, exactly. That is purely exactly what it is. Here I have a piece of realism. I wanted to capture the gunnet birds. It's predominantly oil, and I call this "I Love You and I Admire You," for obvious reasons. There are obvious reasons for that title. Here I have a piece that I did after I realized that I had COVID and had moved away from it. I won't give the title. Well, this is called The Reader 5. It's the fifth of my series of reader paintings, and the book denotes that she reads. And in most of my reader paintings, I have something I'm going to go ahead and divulge. Only my collectors generally know this. I will most often put a watch in the readers. There's a watch in there. The watch will always have a green face.
Interesting.
Now, don't know why I decided to do that, but maybe one day on down the line, because I do think that we paint for millenniums, somebody might look at it and say, you know, that's interesting. All of his artwork that he called The Reader had a watch in there, and they all had a green face. So it's called The Reader, and part of the title involves voyeurism, but it's not lewd or pornographic voyeurism. Someone's obviously watching her through the open window. Here I have a piece that just sold. It's patterned abstract work. I like doing these, and you see a little knife work in here. I like doing these because it allows me, from this work, high detail, break your back, your eyes, to more structured abstract work that allows me to freeform. And I use the analogy of someone playing a guitar and just free-forming it. This is just pure, for me, free-form. It's not like I can't paint like that. I have to have structure, and that's my drawing, and I guess it's the way my mind is molded. But that's sold recently. It's called Musing 7. It showed locally at a couple of galleries, including the Box Gallery, Rolando's gallery. Sorry, Rolando, I didn't mention your last name. Oh. But Rolando's gallery.
No problem. So you said 10 different styles?
I said I have probably about 10 different styles, and don't ask me to name them because I
That's
probably
fine.
can't. But when I sit and realize this is not twisted realism, this is not patterned art, this is something quite different. So I have different styles that I use with different techniques.
It's interesting just to see as we kind of pan here, we're noticing multiple different styles just in these couple corners of your studio, and we're glad to provide the space for you to expand and explore on these styles. I'd like to show them some of your process here in your studio, if you wouldn't mind whipping out a brush or two.
Yes.
Let's do that.
Okay. So when you speak of technique or the way I go about my work, this is acrylic work, and I'm predominantly an oil painter that's learning to use acrylic because it dries darn fast. And there are times with this sorts of work that's what you want. So I was doing this before you came by, and I'm going to touch on that just a tad. Obviously, you can deduce what that was for. So what happens is, I'm now going in behind the piece of tape that I had here to give me a straight line. Yes, I do use tape for straight lines. I think a lot of us do. And I'm using acrylic paint to fill in where the tape missed, didn't allow proper flow. Now, I will take this paint, and also, I do this a lot. I'm mistakenly referring to a classic art strokes like this. I shouldn't do that because I know some artists are not going to like it because there's so many ways artists develop their craft. But I find myself doing this a bunch. I didn't mention it, but I do a lot of lunar landscapes. And with lunar landscapes, the only way you can successfully do that is to paint in this fashion. So what I'm doing now is adding a little bit of differentiation here, for lack of a better word, to what I've got going by just doing some dabbing. And with oil, this is acrylic, with oil, believe it or not, as the minutes pass, after you do this, the paint, if it's the proper viscosity, will continue to blend. And the lunar surface, and I wish I could show you one, but I can't. The lunar surface really does lend itself to that. But if you look me up on Google, you will see that, and look at my lunar work, you will see why this sort of technique, which I really use a lot, is invaluable. Now, trained artists will probably say there's different ways to do that. I'm untrained. So I do what I can do, and I do what I like, because predominantly, I always mention I paint for me first. Now, while I'm doing this, I didn't mention that I've adopted a name that I sign my artwork with. Of course, my name is Andrew Hollimon, or Andy Hollimon, which I prefer, but I sign my work Ana Alu. Now, that's a derivative of the Hawaiian word for Andy. After a trip there in '90, I bought the wife some heirloom jewelry, and her name is Beatrice, and it came out to be Piakalika. Well, I said I'd do that with my name, Andy, and it came out Ana Alu. And that's why you'll see me signature my work with Ana Alu.
And that's where they can find you on the Instagrams.
You can find me on Instagram, as a matter of fact, Ana Alu 8. And I post I post about 99% of my artwork there. That's cool to post.
Where else can they see it?
You can see it on my Facebook page. Now, there are a few online gallery sites, like Singular Art, like the word singular, with the word art attached, no separation. It's a French site that I'm particularly fond of. I've sold there, and I love what they do and how they go about their business. There's a British site by the name of Art Finder. You can also find me on pixels.com under Ana Alu, Andrew Hollimon. I consider that a personal site. It doesn't have as many pieces showing as Art Finder, but it's a pretty good place to get representative look at my work. Or you can Google me, and you have them all.
How about that? And if they reach out to you, what are some other things you're available for?
I do commission work. Special project work, and things along that line. I don't go much outside of that box.
Open to gallery representation?
Right now I'm going to be joining Anthony Burks and Trina, bringing down my piece from the Palm Beach Cultural Council's Caribou Show from ATB Fine Arts, presented by and curated by ATB Fine Arts. We'll bring that down on Monday. It's run now for a few weeks, and I think it's been well received. But that's the only local show that I'm involved with at the moment.
And then we can have folks join you here in your studio in Boynton Beach at 1880 North Congress Avenue, Suite 190 on Saturday, April the 3rd. We're actually going to have our first open studio event here at our Boynton Beach location, so you can meet Andrew and all the other talented artists here in Zero Empty Spaces Boynton Beach, including our newest addition right over there. We're just giving a little sneak preview too, who Andrew was referring as his talented neighbor, local legend, Nicole Galuccio. Hey. And we're very glad to have you, very glad to support you, glad to support the No More Starving Artists Foundation, glad to support all the good folks here in Palm Beach County. And I hope you guys will join us on April the 3rd here in the studio. See you then.
Join us.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.